Hello. So today instead of a pen I have a honey stick I feel like I need to hold something when I do these videos for some reason. We have a lot to go over. Look at all those notes. And today I am indoors so that the wasps don't get me outside of my father's house. Excuse the mess behind me. My name's Haley. Hello and welcome to this video. I forgot to say all that. This is part 2 of 2, discussing the shadow state within this 10th gene key, being at ease, the shadow being self-obsession. So if you have not seen part 1, where I discuss the shadow state of self-obsession, I do recommend you go watch that at some point. Perhaps still proceed with this video if that resonates too. Within that video, we left off talking about how relationships are a direct reflection of how embodied or unembodied you are within this shadow frequency of self-obsession. By that I mean the better, more real, deep your relationships are, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or a family member, means you're resonating more towards the gift frequency. And then if you have weaker relationships that are shallow, based on things more in the physical 3D realm rather than the spiritual and mental realms, and you find you have lots of relationships but none of which are really actually know who you are, then you're more embodied within this shadow state of self-obsession. Once again, this is a sliding scale, meaning it goes infinite to both ends, and it's also relative to who you are and where you have been on this scale. So this is not an invitation to compare yourself and your relationships to other people and their quality of relationship. It's an invitation to observe from the seat of awareness with discernment, that's within another gene key, of how are my relationships, so that I can start to gauge where I, as an individualized point of consciousness, sit on this gradient of self-obsession bleeding into the gift state of naturalness. We haven't talked about the gift state of naturalness quite yet. That will be in the next video. As for this video, we're going to continue on this thought. So he continues on by noting that people that have this shadow enact in them are driven by fear. And I mean, I can speak from experience. Fear is a very powerful force, and it can move you to do things, to say things. I mean, example A, our entire political system is run on fear. Most of our advertising is run on fear, right? When you see I saw an ad the other day, my mom and I were watching TV. It was so random, I hardly ever watch TV, but an ad comes up for Botox, and the lady's dancing, and she's like, oh, I bake a lot, and I go like this when I'm measuring the sugar, and now I saw lines forming, but now I don't have lines because Botox. That entire ad is driven by fear. It's presenting itself to the person who's watching it to be programmed with the subconscious belief that aging is bad, wrinkles are bad, oh, you don't want to become old because youth is where the real beauty lies. All these crazy subconscious programs driven by fear. And this causes the person to act on the ad and go get the Botox or whatever. This is one simple example. People within this 10th shadow state of self-obsession are driven by fear. They're really scared of the wrinkles or whatever it is, right? And this ultimately stems from the one core fundamental belief that they are scared of losing their identity, Richard Rudd says. Now, when I first read that, I'm like, really? The people who struggle with narcissism and self-obsession, back when I had these tendencies and when they do still peek their head, is it because I'm scared of losing my identity? I was like, oh, I don't know if that sounds resonant with me. And then he continues to explain on, and I started to realize why he says this. He says, one of the deepest of all humans' fears is this fear that forces you into a pattern of trying to find out who you are. because we think that in finding out who we are, we'll find out the meaning of all of this. And whether you who's watching this would consciously like to admit it or not, there is a human fundamental yearning to figure it all out. Whether that manifests in extreme existentialism, I'm like tripping over my words, or finding purpose in a job, finding purpose in friendships or a place to live, finding community. We're all on the hunt for meaning, and it manifests in various ways. And this is tied to our fear of losing our identity. Subconsciously, again, perhaps, we think that once we find our purpose, whether it's in the job, the friends, the family, the motherhood, that we will start to understand who am I, identify the self, and therefore survive. So this is a very primal fear that we're running off of that is fueling this shadow state of self-obsession. He says it's an ageless journey of self-knowledge. And there's an axiom that perfectly depicts this, which is the axiom, know thyself. He says it's cut into the door of the oracle in Delphi. The quest for self-knowledge becomes an obsession that actually, ironically enough, keeps you from identifying and defining who you really are. And I guess one thing I'll just point out here, because as I was reading this, I was like, oof. Yeah, I can relate to the quest and the obsession with self-knowledge, devouring books, listening to podcast after podcast. Once you get onto the spiritual path, you could say, there becomes a new obsession with all the spiritual practices, the different types of meditation, the mystical experiences. I could go on. And maybe prior to that, there's a self-obsession with finding yourself and finding meaning in the 3D world and the more shallow things in life. Nonetheless, they're both obsessions. They're both shadow state frequencies, this chasing, this needing to know, this inability to be satiated by your environment or by the tools in your environment. And I know I've definitely struggled with this and still do to a certain degree. And so as I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, so how does one quench this thirst for self-knowledge? How do I quench this thirst for self-knowledge? Because here I am actually dissecting a piece of literature for you all in attempts to know thyself, ironically enough. And kind of the answer that came through for me was, there's nothing wrong interacting with your environment, finding purpose in life. There's nothing wrong with diving into book after book and listening to podcasts. I think the real issue enters when it starts to drive you mad, and it creates this kind of dread and fuels the existentialist fear, that fundamental primal fear. By all means, if you're engaging in life to truly enjoy it, experience it, if we're diving into books like this to pick fun and use our brains and have a fun conversation, if it's for the purpose of fun, I've realized, then we're probably moving into this gift frequency of naturalness, which once again we will get into in the next video. So it's only when you're obsessively coming to these sources to certain points in life, desperately like trying to extract meaning, that it becomes detrimental and sediments you within this shadow frequency. So the first contemplation of this video is, where do I act like I'm starving? Whether that is with meditative practices, books, podcasts, YouTube rabbit holes, trying to derive meaning with every ounce of my being from my work environment, or gaining admiration from my neighbors. Maybe it's being validated by my friends that I so desperately feel like I need. Where is it for me where I find the shadow frequency peeking its head? Because inevitably it's there for everyone in one category of life. Once again, the example I'm providing you is, for me, I know my shadow of self-obsession, this quest for knowledge, comes out with stuff like this. And I have to check myself. And this is the beautiful thing about all shadow states, is all it requires is a quick little checkmate. Ah, I see you. Shadow state of self-obsession. Awareness is the first step to everything. Without awareness, we can't get this party started. We can't get this ball moving. With awareness, naturally, that light starts to enlighten the shadow state, whatever it's coming up as. In this case, self-obsession. So simply becoming aware of where you feel self-obsessed, so thirsty, starving, is like a huge step. I invite you to take more than just a quick little 10-minute contemplation to answer that question. Maybe sit on it, meditate on it for a few days or a few weeks, a few months even. I really, truly believe that the desire in which a person puts forward is what is matched by the divine. And by that, I mean, if you really actually want to know where this shadow state lies, and you keep flexing that desire, your higher self, God, love, Mana, Prana, Shakti, whatever you want to call that thing inside of you and all around you, will inevitably start to bring into light, bring into your awareness where that is. This is a honey stick, by the way. It's literally what it sounds like, a stick filled with honey. I got it at this coffee shop this morning. Okay, moving on. Okay. Wow, I made so many notes, you guys. This is actually wild. I'm going to skip to this little section right here. He says, in the modern Western world, self-obsession is everywhere. What, Richard Red, what are you talking about? The man is right. As I mentioned, it's in our ads. Our ads are so centered around how we look and how we can look better, how we can look younger. It's seen in social media. Gosh, people's Instagrams, people's Facebooks. It's all me, 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 me. People's YouTube channels. I mean, self-obsession is just everywhere, he says. People are obsessed with how they feel and how they look, with what they wear, with what they own, and where they live. And I will just note, this permeates more than just the Western world. However, I will say it's much more concentrated here. I now personally live in the East, the Southeast of Asia. I'm visiting my dad right now in the Western world, and it is very wild. There's definitely Western aspects within the East as well, but it is a lot more prominent over here in California than it is in Indonesia. And who knows why that is, right? I mean, I'm not even going to get into that. Oh, he says it right here, what I just talked about. Until you come to recognize what I just said, until you start to become aware, start to identify where this shadow is, until you come to recognize your own self-obsession, you cannot transcend it. Awareness is the first step. It's so important. So I think it's interesting because I know I myself sometimes get caught up in my little monkey mind. Oh, how can I solve, all these various problems in my life? How about we just start with the very simple and first step that cannot be overlooked, which is, what really is the issue? What am I working with? What cards have I been dealt? I gotta turn over my hand before I play my hand. Wow, there's so many bombs in this chapter. He takes a little of the pressure off, and he reminds us that all inner journeys begin with self-obsession. So this is a step that can't be avoided. So you who's watching this, me as I reflect on an older version of me, there should be none of this reprimanding. Like, oh, I can't believe you're self-obsessed, or I can't believe you had narcissism. Like, it's just a part of the game. All inner journeys begin with the self-obsession. And once again, he says begin, meaning that this is not the entirety of your journey. It's simply a part of the whole. And once again, he warns us with self-obsession peeking its head disguised as spiritual evolution. He says the path itself easily becomes an addiction. He's talking about spiritual self-knowledge, stuff like this, podcast books, meditation even. The path itself easily becomes an addiction that keeps you from truly being yourself. The more you look for your own identity, the more ephemeral it becomes. I Googled that word. Ephemeral means lasting a very short time and fleeting. So it's a dog chasing its own tail. The more I look for Haley Steiner through these books, through these podcasts, through these whatevers, the more I kind of lose it, the more fleeting she becomes. Because who I really am can't fully be discovered within something external of myself. This is something fundamental that one has to keep returning to, that I have to keep returning to, that you who's watching this has to keep returning to. So once again, really starting to identify where self-obsession peeks its head for you is the first and pretty much only thing you need to focus on right now, says Richard Rudd. And I have an inkling he will reveal further steps to us as the line goes down. We will see. He says, at some point, the individual will become tired and realize that what they are seeking for cannot be found. And this is also, I'll just note, this is not one of these like end-all be-all things. I've had this occur many times where I finally give up my chase to find the answer to some existentialist hole I'm in. So I stop searching in the books, the podcasts, and then I wake up and I feel like I found it. Oh my gosh. But then only to reveal yet another part of my ego that wants to find meaning and purpose. So this is not just like a one-time thing. I'm just going to say that. It's like the ascension spiral. There's always new levels of love, awareness to graduate into. And actually, I personally believe that the person who's going to come around anywhere and say they're enlightened probably means they're not. Being disqualified by simply the fact that they have the audacity to declare that about themselves. Someone who's truly enlightened, also known as embodied within a acidic state, you will know because of the way you feel around them. And these people are rare. Like, I really think I've only met 3 of them. I mentioned one of them in these videos. His name's Ben, the guy from Barcelona. That guy, his frequency was, wild. But yes, I just wanted to heed with caution. This is not a one-time merry-go-round. Life keeps going around the merry-go-round. And he notes here how these revelations, this true surrendering and then coming into gnosis, cannot be faked. That means even you cannot lie to you. It's such a deep internal reworking of your DNA that it's like a death and a birth. Dark night of the soul, if you've heard of that, that is applicable to this, which I'm not even going to get into because that's a whole rabbit hole. If that piques your interest, me just saying those words, I highly recommend YouTubing Dark Night of the Soul. It's very interesting stuff. He notes here, right before we get into the repressive and the reactive natures within this shadow state of self-obsession, he notes here that a creative explosion occurs and manifests through the gift of naturalness as these cycles complete themselves, as you finally surrender your search for purpose. Every time you surrender, a little bit more of your creative power is restored to who you actually are, and therefore can be tapped into and utilized to share with not only yourself, but also the world. This is so true, you guys. Like, I've become exponentially more creative in the past year, and it genuinely makes me wonder, as I continue to run through these cycles of surrendering my need to find meaning, how much more creativity will I unleash and be able to share? This is something I've really contemplated. And I mean, again, I think the answer must be infinite, because it never really ends. There's always more cycles to complete. There's always more to shed. There's always more love to step into. And I invite you who's watching this, if that sounds like daunting, like, holy shit, it never ends, to instead switch your perception into, wow, whew, that sounds beautiful. There's always more love to step into. There's always going to be more creativity for me to tap in, tune in, and turn on into. There's always going to be more for me to share, which means there's also always going to be more for me to receive. This is a beautiful thing, this concept of evolution. Yeah, it's interesting because even I myself look at my ego and it's thirst to try to figure it all out. But then the higher parts of me are like, dude, you don't want to figure it all out. If I figured the whole matrix out, game over. No more beauty to be unlocked. No more mysteries to be uncovered. No more surprises to unwrap. So this is a perception I offer you to adopt if that voice of fear is haunting you. Okay, so to wrap this up, we have the repressive nature and the reactive nature of this shadow. The repressive nature being self-denying. And remember, repressive is symbolic of energy draining, whereas reactive is, there's a lot of energy behind it, but it's negative energy. Both are negative. Both are involution. So self-denying. This is an introverted state of self-obsession, going in on itself, involution, once again, not evolution. And this is seen in denying oneself altogether, he says. These are people who live lives completely for others. They're martyrers. I think that's a word. And they're made up entirely of compromise, meaning they don't have any self-respect, and they're always letting people walk over them. People pleasers. Sorry to call you out. I've been there too. Like recently, very recently. Once again, this never ends, right? So I think identifying that shadows might peek their head, and instead of letting that haunt you, once again, seeing the shadow as the opportunity for more light to come onto it, it to be released, and creativity to blossom. But yes, if you're a people pleaser, more likely than not, you are dealing with this repressive nature of self-denial. Those who deny themselves ultimately become like zombies, he says. They have no real self-love and no center or heart within themselves. No center. They let people walk all over them, move them, place them somewhere else if it's convenient for others or if it helps others. Self-denial does not allow them to recognize the divine within themselves. And once again, I'm not telling you not to help people. I think what Richard Rudd is really trying to drive home here is that you're not really of true service to anyone if you're not also helping yourself. You are a part of the whole just as much as your neighbor Jerry, as your mom Amy, as your sister Jenny. You know, you are just as important as them. And the only way to truly be of service is to serve the all, including the self. When you bend over backwards or you help Jerry move, even though you actually don't really have any energy and you really just need to take a nap, you're not actually helping Jerry, even if on a 3D physicality level, it looks as if his move has gone more efficiently because your hands were helping. The energy underneath that action is one of self-denial, is this repressive nature of self-obsession. It's a secret little want to, oh, I need Jerry's admiration. I need his validation. I need Jerry to think I'm a good person. It all roots back to this crazy, once again, inward out, repressive nature of self-obsession. And so I'm sure he'll get into this within the gift of naturalness, but one thing I'll just say is I have a rule for myself because I am a recovering people pleaser. I try my best to only help people out of a joyful effort. So what does that mean? That means that even if my neighbor Claudia just broke her back and she really needs someone to come over and make her soup, I ask myself, Haley, do you have enough joyful effort in you, enough energy in you to do this task for Claudia with true, genuine happiness? Or are you doing this out of obligation because you feel bad for her? Oh, because, well, she doesn't have a husband and, man, her family lives far away, and if I don't help her, who's going to? What energy is this coming from? Because realistically, in the eyes of the all, you're not being of service to Claudia, Haley, if you can't actually do this with all the joy, love, and presence in your heart. And this is very hard to uphold, I will say. Truly doing things only out of a joyful effort and not from this lower manifestation, self-obsession frequency of obligation. So you who's watching this, if you happen to think you struggle with people-pleasing and self-denial, this repressive nature, can ask yourself, where do I help people from the energy of obligation? Once again, Richard Rudd said the first step is awareness. Let's cast that light of awareness on where this shadow state is peeking its head. And the reactive nature of this shadow state of self-obsession being narcissistic. We kind of briefly touched on this within the first part of this shadow state. And he drives it home here. The narcissist excludes all others, denies the existence of others. It's my world and you're all just living in it. That's what the narcissistic person says. These are people who live lives based entirely around themselves. Well, I don't care if the restaurant's not open. I'm hungry and I want to eat right now. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to sleep in? Well, I have a meeting, so it doesn't matter. Just some examples for you guys. They have anger and they project it outward. They live in paranoia that the world or others will somehow rob them of their right to freedom. The reactive nature, narcissists, specifically find relationships hardest of all. So the difference between the reactive and the repressive nature being within that repressive nature that we just talked about, they have a bunch of relationships, but they're actually fake. They're founded on obligation and pity, and I need people to like me. Whereas this reactive nature of narcissism has very shallow relationships, but it's no secret. Everyone senses it. Richard Rudd says they're essentially locked into a love affair with themselves, but not with their true self, with their ego. Oh, and then he throws something nice at us. He says the true self is everywhere and in everything, since its nature is love. I love when he throws a random, just like universal truth at us. I'm going to read that one more time. The true self is everywhere and in everything, since its nature is love. Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. I love the omni words. They're just so like sweet like honey, honestly. And he gives us a little hint here, which is the last thing I'll leave us with. He says, in order for the person to graduate out of this reactive nature of narcissism and into the gift frequency of naturalness, they have to drop the illusion of individual identity. Meaning they have to start to wake up to the fact that they are not the only person in this whole pie. The world revolves around not only them, but also everyone else in it. They need to start to conjure up a genuine care and yearn to take care of others as they take care of themselves. Whew, that was a lot, you guys. So stay tuned for next time. Gift of naturalness. It should be pretty sweet like honey. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in with me for this Gene Keys episode. I also just wanted to come on here and start promoting my one-to-one coaching that I offer to women and girls ages 16 to 35. If you followed me on Instagram for a while, you might be a little bit familiar with my story. I was a model in New York City for 5 years, and in that time frame, I did quite some damage. I developed a really severe eating disorder, body dysmorphia, chronic anxiety. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even go out to dinner without thinking about how much calories, how much I'd have to overwork out in order to compensate for what I was eating. All of those issues led to quite a depression and turned into PCOS, and I also lost my menstrual cycle for over 5 years. All of this amalgamation of issues led me to soon realize that something needed to change. I went through much work. Many people helped me to get to where I am now. And I'm so thrilled to say I'm living such a more abundant life, and I don't feel zapped and drained and fear of judgment anymore like I used to. I would love to offer what I've learned through my own embodied experience, the meditative techniques that have gravitated toward me, and the own verified games that I've made up and curated to help you walk home to more of you and who you really are, so that all of these things can stop draining your energy. You know, all the constant comparison to others and to people on Instagram, all the over-analysis about working out and what you're eating or what you look like. All of these things are not what life's about, as cheesy as it sounds. And I would love to help you come into more unity with you if you struggle with any of these things and you're a woman or girl between the ages of 16 and 35. So feel free to reach out to me if one-on-one coaching sounds resonant. You can feel free to DM me through Instagram or contact me via email, both of which will be left below in the description box. So much love and aloha to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.